So question one.
Wow.
Do you remember where the idea for the off-kilter beat from Nova came from?
Yes. But it was interesting that you go straight in on that. I'm not surprised coming from you, let's face it. But
like to break the ice.
Yeah, exactly. That it's not a great answer either, I'm afraid, but it's like me and Stuart McCallum, my guitarist, we were just searching round for ideas in a hot room in Leeds College of Music, I think it was. And it wasn't the greatest day. And then I just found myself playing this beat that I didn't understand what I was actually doing. You know what I mean? It was just a thing. Have you found yourself in that situation where you're playing something and you're like, somebody press record quickly because I don't know what I'm doing in a way that I'm never going to be able to come back to this. Mm-hmm. So I kind of had to record it and then go back to it and sort of work out what it was I was actually doing, which wasn't that complicated, but we'll get into that.
Yes. So the brain computer crunches something that's kind of ineffable. It's not, you don't really have access to it in your conscious mind, but you're just like, I need to play this out, record it. We'll figure out what it is later.
Basically, that's exactly how it came about. Yeah. Bit of a fluke, bit of a jam into a fluke. Yeah.
And the drum part came first, and you layered the guitars later?
We were playing at the same time, actually, which we don't often do that, but we sort of came up with the two things at the same time, which was nice.
Yeah. That's always nice when that happens. It seems like in my experience, there are two ways ideas come to me. Like one is, as you say, where I'm just messing around and then something bubbles up emergently. And another is like away from the drum kit, like in the shower or in the car or something. And you're just like, oh no, I need to get this down somehow.
Yeah. Have you ever woken up and tried to get the idea down that you just dreamt? That's a tough one. Because they're normally like completely finished, mixed productions that you dream. You know, you don't dream a rough demo. You dream like an exact finished, how it's going to sound on vinyl kind of mix. So it's quite hard trying to get those down.
You know what? That just signals to me that I need to do more writing, because you're probably dreaming about things because you're writing all the time and your brain is just living and breathing it. And it's been too long since I've written. Random one.
I thought you were going to say that reminds you need to do more sleeping in order to have some dreams, you know, in the first place.
For a minute in like 2020, 2021, I was reading this book on lucid dreaming and I was like trying to do it, and it worked like 2 times in 2 years. And then I just got lazy and now I just don't care. But I don't remember my dreams usually. But what this brings up for me is, Are you familiar with the trumpet player Dave Douglas, the jazz musician?
Yes.
Have you heard the story behind this tune called the Frisell Dream?
No.
Okay, so there's a record called Strange Liberation, which is like 2001, 2002. And I remember it because it came out right when I was in grad school. I'd first moved to New York. So a bunch of us were going down to the Vanguard to watch Dave Douglas, and he had like Clarence Penn, Chris Potter, James Genius, like all-star group. It was amazing. They played this tune called the Frisell Dream, which later appeared on the record. And he told the story from stage before they played it. And it was very much as you describe. He dreamed this fully fledged tune, but he thought in his dream it was Bill's. He's like, in this dream, I'm playing a gig with Bill Frisell and we're playing this song. And so he wrote down as much of it as he could when he woke up. And then he called Bill and he like played it for him and sang it for him. And he's like, is this anything you've ever written? And Bill's like, nope, you can have it. And so then it ended up being Dave's tune.
That's a great way to get with an artist. You know, anyone I want to collaborate with, I'll remember this as a conniving story. Like, yeah, but I dreamt it, man. It's your tune. It's got to be you.
Yeah, real talk. Like a lot of people will probably answer that. I think I just plagiarized you, email. It's just like subject line. I think I just plagiarized you. So random one.
I've got to say it's absolutely roasting hot in London right now.
Is it?
It's absolutely roasting, and I've closed the windows and doors because you're going to get road noise outside out of respect to our anybody listening to this.
Yeah.
So if I'm just sweating all over the place, then that's why.
Yeah. So I take it you don't have AC there in your apartment, or not in that room at least.
London doesn't have AC. That would be preposterous. Yeah, it's not hot enough for long enough.
Right. Because in 3 weeks it'll be pissing rain and 15 degrees Celsius, right? Yeah.
We'll be putting the heating on in about 2.5 weeks' time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, either way, I'll respect your time so that you can open the window. We'll get through these questions.
Oh, good, man. It's lovely to actually speak to you.
Likewise.
In person.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So, random one. What's your favorite Photek track besides Hidden Camera, at least?
It's a track called One Nation. And
have not heard that.
Yeah, you got to hear it, man. It's insane. Like you'll hear it and you'll think this is insane, and then it gets to about a minute and a half in, and then it gets really insane. It's just ridiculous. I think it was on Prototype Records. It's not particularly well known or anything, but Photek One Nation, absolutely ridiculous track. Just
love it.
Yeah.
Photek B-sides. So, segueing to you, was there a time you made a conscious decision to lean into developing a unique style, or did it come organically, bit by bit, over time?
That's a great question, because in, being at my stage of things and teaching people, that's something that you get asked, is like they want a style of their own. And I'm just one of those people who sort of just went along doing their own thing without consciously knowing that I was developing my own thing. And that kind of begs the question, like, how does one do that if that's something that you want to do yourself? And looking back on it, to me, that was just, it's actually just having conviction in doing what, in prioritizing what you think is important. So to me, I thought it was important to go down to Metalhead's on a Sunday night and listen to a lot of drum and bass. But actually at the time, of course, that was just for enjoyment as an enthusiast for that music. And it's been later on that I've kind of realized that I've put all this kind of inspirational material in the bank for my drumming brain to pounce on, And of course, that just getting so into something like that, it just becomes your sort of musical DNA, that you rely on to inform you what to play and in whatever situation it is. And I guess you just end up, not doing the same things, but like reacting in the same way, or just reacting in the same way to whatever the musical situation is. And I guess you end up just sounding like you, but I wouldn't know really a way to specifically do that if I was trying to do that.
Yeah. So that's one about following your bliss and being open to serendipity, as you did with the sort of drum and bass scene. But to turn it around, was there ever a time when you needed to resist shiny objects or resist doing what everybody else was doing so that you could focus on something you were doing?
I guess, I've done some pretty straight down the line things and just haven't really bought into them that much. But like I played big band music as a kid, basically. That was my thing. I didn't really know that was my thing. I just did it because my drum teacher did it. And I was just a diligent, conscientious student. And I'd kind of look back on that stuff as just really good discipline before I started to channel the records that I was actually interested in into my playing and musicality and all that. So it felt like the right way around, I wouldn't want to just only know Dilla and then try and learn to read music or something. It wouldn't make sense. I don't know.
Yeah. Besides the big band stuff, how deeply did you go into jazz during your development?
Like pretty into it. I think it was always a bit of a kind of, like I say, a disciplined kind of area. It, there is that feeling that once I'm not saying that I ever mastered jazz, but I mean, getting deep into it, it does allow you to express yourself in sort of any way and in a spontaneous way. And I think that's something that still remains in my playing. Like I did a session the other day for a pianist called Ollie Rockberger, and he was loving. He was in the room with me whilst I was recording. It was hilarious, and he was just loving the risk, and he was just pointing that out that there'd be like a 2-bar drum fill or something, and I would just leave horrendous tense kind of space in that time and just leave it till the last possible second to play something, and that's all of my favorite drummers are the kind of drummers that do that play spontaneously, that, just play from the heart, not in a preconceived kind of YouTube presentation type of a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's actually a great segue to another thing I really want to know about. I've been obsessed with this and I've been asking everybody I talk to about it, but it's flow. And exactly as you say, it's that state you get into where things are just flowing through you organically. You're turning off your left brain. You're just letting yourself respond to the music and see what comes out. And my question for you is, did that always come easily to you, or was there a time when you were sort of more self-conscious when you played? And if so, how did you work on it?
I mean, I'm still self-conscious when I play. It's like flow or the zone, as I call it as well, is just something. I mean, do you know any shortcuts to getting to that place? Because I find it tends to come about when I'm relaxed, basically, and it's like your mind just getting out of the way of just playing straight from the heart. And I hope that we all know this feeling. I know that you know the feeling of just thinking about something completely separate to what you're doing, and the drumming just takes care of itself. Not only does it take care of itself, but you actually get to. You find yourself playing the perfect thing in every moment, and it's probably my favorite place to be. I just can't manufacture a way of definitely getting there. I have to just wait and see if that's going to happen or not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? The one way to assure you won't get there is by trying to force it.
100%. Trying to concentrate is a bad state of concentration.
Yeah. One thing I think about is practicing failing, because one thing I find in my own psychology is if there's a high pressure playing situation, like a recording, tracking, or a clinic or something, where I feel like there are people are going to be sitting judging my playing, the worst mind state to get into is to feel like I need to do something that's above my current ability in order to succeed. And working backward from that, I realized I had a psychology where I was almost somewhat hoping to put one over on people, like to have a suddenly above average performance, or to play like somebody who wasn't me. It's like, I'm going to sit down and all of a sudden I'm going to play like Mike Mitchell or Dennis Chambers or something. And when I feel that, I try to recognize it, and I'll just try to say, like, I'll catch myself doing it. Like, no, I'm trying to lie with my playing. Like, I need to be authentically me. I need to picture me being very authentically me, and then people still accepting that. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't.
Man, I totally get it. Like, that's kind of, it's become more apparent for me doing drum shows, because you start to compare yourself and decide what you don't have. I mean, for example, I remember doing a drum show and I was on immediately after Gerald Hayward. And it was, I was just like, this is not fair. And I was so caught up in everything that I wasn't doing that Gerald Hayward was doing, that's exactly what you're saying, is of just sort of trying to just zone back in on yourself and what it is that you do, and trying to just, yeah, like you say, do that authentically. It's tough.
Yeah. But it sounds like you're in a spot where even if the muse doesn't visit you and you're not having 100% blissful flow experience in the zone, you can still usually pull out something that's pretty damn good. And that's got to build confidence too.
Yeah, there's definitely a place, yeah, that if I'm not in the zone, it's also not it's not a disaster by any means. It's just you can just teeter on the edge of it sometimes. It's interesting. There's always kind of pockets of it, but yeah, here's to more flow state gigs, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, this just came up, but do you ever find that there's kind of like a good beginning and a good end, but like a painful middle when you're learning new music, where at the beginning you're able to be really unself-conscious and just play instinctively and have fun, and then as you start to learn the tune more and listen back to some takes, you start to get more and more detail oriented and perfectionistic, but you haven't quite committed it to your long-term memory yet. So then you're just playing really self-consciously trying to nail the take. And then finally, after months, it's in there deep enough that you can let go again. But that middle ground, for me at least, is rough. Yeah, I'm wondering if you experienced that at all.
Well, the most sort of grueling situation that I'll put myself through is learning my own music, because it has to sound, once it's finished, it has to sound like the way that you conceived it and pictured it in the first place. And that can often mean, I'm not sure Nova was one of those specifically, but I mean, I'm going through the process at the moment of kind of having the idea, getting towards recording the idea, listening back to it and wondering why it doesn't sound the way that I want it to sound. And then it's basically getting deep into the process of actually learning it properly and making it sit in the way that it has to sit to satisfy, you know, the preconceived idea of what it's going to be. And that I get really tough on myself in those sessions, and it feels like a big learning curve. I'd put myself under a lot of pressure to get things perfect, and that feels very rewarding to me in the end, and I must be getting something out of the process. But it's mostly to do with kind of evening things out. I like the sound of, you know, I listen to so much electronic music and program stuff, and always have done, have probably taken more inspiration from that than I have actual real drummers. So it tends to be just an evening out and just a kind of pocket thing, and to really take control of that, it's like you say, the long-term memory, and once it's really embedded, that seems to be where you can take care of all of the facets, and not, you know, if I'm thinking about anything technical or zoning in on one part of the groove or something, it's kind of curtains at that level of trying to get something perfect. It's also, for me in my own music, I'm playing against quantized stuff a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. So that will just show you up if your pocket isn't 100% perfect. So
totally.
Yeah. And I like to go for whole takes as well with my stuff, so I don't make it easy. So yeah, it's It's quite a steep curve on my stuff.
Yeah, I've realized I'm kind of a punch snob too. Like, I just won't feel right if I can't get a take that's complete start to finish, even if there are flaws. Yeah. And I'm not even saying that to brag, because I think probably it's more of a like perfectionistic neurosis. But yeah, if I have to, like if somebody's going to make a punch in a take, I would just as soon like the engineers do it and just don't tell me about it. But I need to feel like I've done a serviceable take.
But the thing is, are you doing that because you're a perfectionist, or are you doing that because you think that it actually makes for a better piece of music, you know, with a start and a what's the word? Just like a cohesive start, middle, end. You know, that I love that about one take. And often with my music, if it's, like I say, there'll be a lot of programmed elements. Like a whole live drum take can really dynamically, genuinely add in a way that I think punching in and out perhaps won't. So there is another reason apart from just pinning a badge on yourself of, you know, well done. So I don't know. It just feels good though, doesn't it?
It does. And I also wonder if it comes from jazz, because yeah, you're probably not going to do punches very often in a jazz tune because it's so interrelated. Everything you play is because the piano player or the guitar player or the bass player played something. So you're not going to be like, let me re-record the drums behind this chorus of guitar. Yeah.
I mean, I do find the other thing is when you do record together with musicians, it's very noticeable not how much you can get away with, but just how different it is in terms of being able to create a pocket between the guys in the room or, you know, in the studio whilst playing simultaneously is very different to cold takes against a click and some program stuff.
For sure. There's definitely some mutual flow where if it's working well, there's kind of this feedback loop where everybody sort of bootstraps everybody's confidence, and that can feel really good.
Yeah, and I guess it can find its own pocket as opposed to there only being one pocket available that it has to be.
Completely. I want to transition a little bit to talk about drum culture.
Interesting.
Do you consider Instagram, YouTube, TikTok a net positive for drummers or a net negative?
Oh, I don't know.
All the easy ones.
It's got to be positive. But I mean, for me, it's just like too much exposure to just too much stuff. Like, I think it's great that things are available, and it's great for me to be able to reach out directly to people that might want to hear what I'm doing. But there's a lot, and also the way that it's sort of generated its own genres of drummer in terms of Instagram drummers and that sort of thing. That's interesting. I mean, it's not a bad thing, you know. If only Marcus Gilmore would post some more soundcheck videos and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do you think about that?
I was talking to Mike Mitchell about a year ago, and he was saying where the internet goes wrong, it's because it selects for really short form. And he's saying like anybody can sound great over 2 minutes, but if you listen to somebody over 2 hours instead of 2 minutes, you realize like, can they sustain a musical arc? Like, do they have any creativity, or do they have one chop that they can do really fast? And then if you advance the playhead beyond that, it's just the same thing over and over again. And that kind of got me between the eyes, because I'm like, I think by that standard, I might be whack. But I think it is a good standard to hold ourselves to, like to try to remember that even in this world where you're trying to get somebody's attention for 30 seconds as they're in line at Starbucks on their phone, like there maybe needs to be a route of longer form music that sort of replenishes the surface level stuff, because otherwise it'll just be copies of copies of copies and just more superficial. And I think, I mean, I'm just spitballing here. I have no idea. I'm just going off the top of my head, but it seems to me maybe if music gets too far from some kind of authentic, soulful, organic root, like people are going to stop resonating with it and they're going to gravitate toward the more like longer form vinyl, whatever. Because there have been a few reactions. Like it seems like vinyl was a big reaction to digital music. So it does seem like there's a pendulum where as listeners, we need to hear something that's real and honest and sustained. Possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we've been told that albums are dead for the last, I don't know, 10 or 15 years maybe. But that doesn't seem to be the case. I just don't think that's the case for artists. I just think it makes sense as an artist to put out a body of work. That's just how it is. But I think the internet does provide like another performance platform, which is useful to have. Doesn't just have to be a gig or a show or recording or whatever it is. You've sort of got something else to get your shit together for and present yourself. So, that's not a bad thing. It's just, I guess it's like you say, it's just how people decide to do that.
Yeah.
I just don't want to see someone who's rehearsed the same thing over and over and over again and then suddenly hits record and I just see that little snippet, I still want to see some honesty on there, which I think there's plenty of. I think there's plenty of everything. There's lots of everything.
Another good segue, because I want to ask you.
We're killing the segues.
No, you're literally presaging like a lot of the next questions I had written down. I'm like, oh, Richard's going there already. I don't even need to segue this. But I do want to ask you, and I have to phrase this delicately because I don't want to disrespect people who are just beginning their drumming journey. This is something I rightly got slapped for in the early years of the channel because I was like, these are good drummers, these are bad drummers. And it's like, well, there are a lot of people who are just starting out and like we should be encouraging to them and like, et cetera, et cetera. Be that as it may, no disrespect to people who are more proto on the drum journey. But what are some things that pop out to you if, say, you're scrolling Instagram and there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't pop out and then a couple things that do? Like, what differentiates those drummers that catch your attention and you're like, ooh, this is interesting, from maybe those that don't or don't yet?
I don't know. I guess it's that reason that I was saying before of people who are clearly sort of playing in a spontaneous way and sort of being reactive and innovative, I guess. And I can still, I'm not a chops guy by any means, but I can still enjoy a chop from time to time, I just probably won't ever go back to it, but we'll have a look. And I don't know, there's just some good pockets, some interesting music, something. There's some innovation going on in all sorts of music as well, and just sort of catching that, and just whether you can just enjoy it or sort of feel like you have to be inspired by it. I think that's the difficult thing. I'm not a big scroller really in general, and I think probably for that reason I want to kind of I don't want to feel like I have to take everything on board. Sometimes you just want to watch something for the enjoyment of it, as opposed to having to feel like you absorb it and end up tomorrow going to practice it or something. You know what I mean? Totally.
Yeah. And the longer I play, luckily, knock on wood, the less I feel like every single amazing lick I see, like I immediately need to either hop in the shed and learn or else feel bad that I don't know it. To echo what we were talking about before with like resisting the shiny objects, like I hope that most players get to a point where, while continually being inspired to improve themselves, they still kind of have enough confidence in and focus on their own voice that they're developing, that they can see other things and enjoy them, but they don't immediately feel pulled off kilter.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Last question.
Agreed. Last question.
Last question before I let you go. How did I do on Nova? Be brutal.
Well, look, I've got a lot of respect for you as a drummer and as an educator, right? I feel like I can't really critique your drumming in terms of the fact you're a great drummer, right? But what I can critique is, because it's one of the most personal relationships that I have, is between me and my music, right? Mm-hmm. So I can talk about what I see to be your relationship with my music.
Oh, I love this. So I love this direction. Tell me more.
Right. Well, so I think that in the main groove, in the 30-second note part of it, mm-hmm. I think you prioritize the 30-second note too much, and the backbeat not enough. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think if you listen to mine, and that's what I wanted it to have, is, you know, a lot of my music, I don't want people to come away thinking, oh, that was clever, what's going on there. I want them to come away thinking that's a great piece of music, loved it. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of, when there are these little twists and kind of extra undercurrents going on in my music, it's about just trying to get them into, like, so embedded that I can just offer them up as such a sort of repetitive, consistent part of the music that they don't kind of they're not overbearing in the groove itself. So to me, when I think of the Nova beat, it's just a backbeat, mm-hmm. with a little kind of some lightness around that 30-second note business, which is great if we're drummers and we want to talk about that. That's a thing. But it's like the way that has to go down is just in a subtle kind of way. And what I've realized from that tune as well is, like, the same way that we use, you know, we don't think of it so much, but like looping a piece of music is a huge aesthetic in music, you know. In terms of hip hop, you could sort of base hip hop is the sound of a loop has a vibe immediately. It offers something up.
Right.
So Nova kind of had that sort of thing. It had to establish a kind of a loop kind of vibe in terms of using that idea over and over again, for it not to be kind of clever and accentuating the fact that there is something clever going on there. So it's kind of coming up with the idea and then kind of burying it for everyone apart from the likes of you and my Patreon people where we actually want to talk about that, you know. In fact, I'll send you the video that I made for my Patreon people of playing that beat, and it won't teach you anything you don't know, but it will just sort of show you how I approach it, basically.
Yeah. No, I think that's super deep. And I know immediately what you mean, because the top of the priority list in my head is, here's this novel thing, this 30-second note offset. Here's an opportunity to, like, and kinesthetically, it feels really good and interesting to play. So it's easy to sort of get carried away with, like, oh, what, you know, you're sort of halfway in flow, like just seeing what your body will do to fill that space. But yeah, there probably needs to be a little bit more musical maturity brought to it. And I imagine that's the difference as well, being the composer and having it be, as you say, kind of your baby, and you're thinking holistically about the whole tune. rather than treating it as like a drum etude.
100%. And I mean, that's the way that I go about all of my music. It just tends to end up that there's enough of a kind of twist and a detail to the drumming that if you want to get into it, you can. This kind of a pattern has emerged in my music for that happening. And if you don't want to engage with that, you can just listen to it. You can enjoy Jordan Rakai singing, like being amazing as he is, and just still nod to it, you know? Although there were a few comments which I did find hilarious, of people just finding it totally detestful, of not being able to handle the off-kilterness of it, you know, which I thought was hilarious.
Well, so great art should challenge people.
So repelled by a 30-second note. I'll tell you the other thing I noticed when you did it was that you were playing it like with your right hand, but I play it with my left. And
you mean play the offset? So as yes. If you were sticking it hand to hand, right hand lead in 30 seconds, and you catch the offset with the left hand.
Yeah, but basically without that first right hand.
Yes.
You can see sometimes I'll sort of gesture it, and sometimes I'll play it as a ghost note, which I think is more conducive to being able to just flow your way out of it every time. I think your way is technically cooler, but harder to... I think you had more variation around that part, and I have less. All the chops stuff at the beginning, very nice, by the way.
I also, and you know, I'll let you go soon because I know you're sweating in there. But I also noticed in your version, it was very difficult to duplicate the freedom you had rhythmically while still telegraphing the beat. Does that make sense? So it's like you'll do that implied meter at the quarter note triplet level, and as a listener, the beat's just like completely clear where 1, 2, 3, 4 are throughout it, even though the drumming sounds really free. And I found that really difficult to duplicate. I would do a take and try to play freely around it, and then I would find even my ear drifting from like, okay, I landed at the end of the phrase, but it sounded floaty instead of the downbeats being clear throughout it, which again, probably just is a little more Instagram drumistic than just fully respecting the song.
Well, yeah, it's just balance, and it's also trying to get... I want to do takes when I'm in the flow state as well, which that was one of those tunes. It got there, you know, so it wasn't first take. And it's also, for me, it's a really fine balance between like how much I'm listening to what is happening and reacting to it, and how much I'm just playing over that. And I think in that intro section, you know, which is more chopsy, I think I'm still trying to sort of position myself around what is already there. And I kind of have this block where I can't, even if I wanted to, just kind of chops over something belligerently, you know what I mean? So I think when the recording is happening, there's still a sort of like a holding off and respect to what's going on, and sort of prioritizing listening quite a bit over just going forward with whatever phrase that I'm heading into. But like also with that tune, it was really good sort of getting into the zone with it, and, you know, starting those triplet phrases in a strange place and having absolutely no idea how you're going to resolve it. And that's all part of the fun. And it's the ones that start resolving and you start to build on something that really feels like a special take. And that's the one in the end that is the one for me. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of, there's this whole balance of things that I'm looking for them to align for it to be the one.
Totally.
It's that process. Yeah.
When the fun, the serendipity, the flow, the being in the zone aligns with the output also being what you want to hear in retrospect listening back. And that's really hard. As I was saying, like sometimes in order to get the details right, I have to do a really self-conscious take. But it's great when those stars align. Listen, Richard, it's been amazing. Really, really appreciate you making the time. Where would you send people to look you up if they are hearing about you for the first time?
I'd send them to Spotify first to go and actually listen to some of this stuff that we're talking about and see if it makes sense. I'd recommend some tunes like The Self or Spin or Nova or Icarus, actually. That's another one that's very much up your street with a kind of one of those off-kilter 16th note triplets. It's too soon to just boil it down technically, just like that.
Just absorb it first.
Just listen to it as a piece of music. But I would send people to my Patreon, which has established itself as a bit of a thing and something that I enjoy doing, and have just been filming some new tutorials today, and we just I learn from that. We get into some interesting stuff. And what was I relating this to earlier on? Just it's just things that I think are interesting and can prioritize. It's the first time that I've really taught having ownership over that. You know what I mean? It's like I could choose anything I think is important. We're gonna break down a Source Direct drum and bass classic or whatever it is, whatever I think is worth looking at. And that over a sustained period of time, that gets to be pretty interesting and fun when you just keep on doing that.
Awesome. So the album's on Spotify and Richard Spaven on Patreon.
I would concur, yes.
Amazing. Well, thanks again for doing this. Really appreciate it. We'll wrap. I'll get this uploaded and edited, and I'll ping you when it goes live.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Look, I don't. Do people appreciate you enough? I appreciate you. I just want to tell you that. Yeah, it's funny because you are somebody. I have to be careful. You are somebody that is not shy of putting at something on YouTube that has quite a ambitious title to it, and the thing
sometimes
with you, well, yeah, no, absolutely fine, but like how to play like Marcus Gilmore, for instance, and the thing with you, like I don't know anyone else who could actually tell me, who could actually break it down into something really worthwhile coming from that sort of a title. You know what I mean? I think you really get inside just the minds of people. Like from this conversation, that's really what I'm getting here, that we've talked about psychological stuff a lot here. So yeah, respect to you, man. I love what you do. And I also blame you for Crave the Spave. Thanks for that.
Happy to oblige. Well, you flatter me, sir. It's extremely gratifying to hear that. Because yeah, sometimes I go in the shed, do my thing, and it's hard to tell if anybody's listening. But especially coming from you, that means a lot. So I appreciate it.
Pleasure.